2, 1. Hey, everyone. Happy Monday.
Hello.
Welcome in. I'm Jess.
Yay!
Yay! Joined by the House of People. It's Joe and Abby. How are you both doing today, friends?
Good. We're recovering. Mostly me. I think Abby's almost there, but I'm still kind of dealing with the brain fog from this weekend. But I'm good.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
for those
choices were made.
those of y'all that don't know, Joe and Abby braved a 24-hour marathon. I think Abby, you made it to what, 10 p.m.
Yeah, I tapped out at hour 16. Like,
Yep.
after that, I was like, because he's like, oh, I wasn't planning on having you. And I was like, deuces! And I, like, escaped before he could change his mind. Because I'm like, nope, you gave me an out.
Yep, I did give you an out. You are gone.
Ran.
Oh, man. So, yeah, Joe, overall thoughts on the 24 hours, my friend? First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
Of all, how are you feeling?
Like I said, I'm feeling pretty good. Like I did manage to get a decent amount of sleep after it was done when I went to bed at 6 a.m. on Sunday morning. I still feel kind of sluggish, but overall not bad. Overall, I think it went really, really well. I mean, it was mostly Abby's idea, and it was executed perfectly. Like everything just synced up. Like the timeline just worked. Everybody, I didn't get a bad word about it. Like everybody was like, "This is the greatest idea ever," and you're like a genius. I'm like, I can't take all the credit. So
yeah. So friends, Abby came up with this awesome idea of time traveling adventure starting from Stone Age to terraforming Mars, and you were playing games throughout that basically span the timeline from. I don't even remember what was the Stone Age original timeline.
So it started with Stone Age, which was like 26 million BC. And then from there we went to Terracotta Army, which was like 237 BC. Then Seven Wonders Architects, which I think was like, like 50 or 60 BC or something. I forget the exact years. And then the ones that I do know off the top of my head because they're easy. So after that was Downfall of Pompeii, which was like 79 AD. Then we went to Carcassonne, which was like 1064.
1096.
Then, 1096, not 1064. Oh, you got okay. Well, then you do it. You got the picture.
So after that was Gutenberg, which was 1436. Lisboa, which was 1755. 18 Chesapeake, which was 1829. Sagrada, which was 1882. Carnegie, which was 1919. Watergate in 1972, and then Terraforming Mars in 2400.
That's awesome.
Yep. So there it is.
And you gave away you all gave away a bunch of games and stuff.
Yep, we did. Yeah, we did 8. We did 8 giveaways. Yeah.
Yeah. So friends, check out the VOD for sure. It was a lot of fun. I got to participate in a few of them as well. It was really
it was great to have you.
Yeah, I love you both, and I'm so glad that you are celebrating the 500 followers. And here's to 500 more, Joseph.
Yes, I hope so. As of the end of the stream yesterday, and then we did Thomas's Tabletop After Dark after that.
Oh,
so
gosh.
Yeah, it was that was we're both just like, we're here physically.
Right.
And not much else.
Yeah.
But after all that, I'm sitting at like 5:30 now, so slowly making the climb to the next milestone.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. Well, today, friends, we've got an awesome segment for you. We all are familiar with our community connections now. We like to bring folks in from the gaming hobby and chat with them and get to know them a little bit more about who they are and what they do in the gaming space. And you will probably know our guest for tonight. He is a co-designer with Motor City Gameworks that come out with games like Motor City, Three Sisters, and also are all the people behind Fleet the Dice Game. Even though Fleet the Dice Game was published by another publisher, these two gentlemen have been behind all three of those, what they call strategic roll and write games. But we have one part of that half there going on. So please allow all of us to welcome the wonderful, the talented, the awesome person that is Matt Riddle. Good evening.
Hey!
Hey!
That was awesome. And I Joe, I loved what y'all talked about with going from prehistory to that's fantastic. What a great idea to play
Oh,
games
thank
like
you.
through time like that. That's you and Abby. That's awesome.
I know.
By the way,
and-
sorry.
It's all right. Problem is, I can never top it, so I don't even know what
Yeah.
I'm going to do
No,
for
it
my
was
future
really,
things.
it was a good idea. I mean, I'm gonna go back and watch it, but it's just fun to kind of think, even just like thematically, right, of the progression that you're working through, throughout that,
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So hello, by the way, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah,
This is
of
awesome.
course.
Welcome, Matt. Welcome.
Welcome. And also welcome to Tokra here and James Brazil. Welcome in. This is officially a board gaming stream now because James is present. A friend of the community and also of all of us here. And so thank you, James, for being here. And whoever else is lurking or might be trickling in later on this evening or early in the morning, because I know Dutch Yoda said he's going to sign in, even though it's 4 a.m. in the
Oh.
Netherlands.
That guy never sleeps, ever. He's always awake.
So, friends, we're going to get to know Matt a little bit better here today. So, kicking us off here, Matt, first and foremost, we want to say welcome to you. Thank you so much for being here this evening. And before we get down into a little bit deeper dives into who you are, why don't you give everyone a little bit of introduction on who is Matt Riddle, what you do in the gaming space, and how you would like to identify yourself?
Yeah, so I've been a board game designer now for 12 years, and it's been mostly with Ben, my design partner. He and I have been friends since we were little kids, and literally like middle school. And then we now have another partner, Adam Hill, who's our kind of third wheel. That sounds negative. He's awesome. He's a third equal partner.
Musketeer. There you go.
There you go. That's a better way to put it. And so between the three of us, I have started Motor City Gameworks, and Ben and I design, I don't know, 15, 16 games kind of ahead of time, sort of throughout all the publishers, beginning with Fleet, the original Fleet, the card version was our first ever design, our first ever game we tried to make and sold to Eagle Griffin, and that kind of its success, way back when, like 2012, allowed us to keep doing this. I mean, it was an opportunity that we didn't know what we didn't know back then, and we sold it to them, and that was actually kickstarted way back in the dawn of Kickstarter. And then we had a bunch of games that weren't kickstarted and kind of more traditional routes, but it's been awesome. And that was through those 10 or 15 games that kind of led us to where we are today with Motor City Gameworks. It's been an opportunity for us to not we're not trying to become Eagle Griffin or Asmodee or anything like that, but we want to be able to kind of run our own series and sort of do our own thing and kind of have an opportunity to put a game out every year. And right now we're focusing on those loaded rolling rights, and that's kind of the plan moving forward. As long as we keep having ideas that we think are worth folks' times, then we will continue to try to make them.
Awesome. Very, very cool. We have a comment from James that says, I love all the roll and writes and the card games, Subastral, Stellar, and Pete Mess? Is that what that one is?
Pete Motts.
Pete
Yep.
Motts, okay.
Well,
Very
thank
cool.
you, James. Yeah, that's Ben and I's kind of, I think we'll get into this probably in a little bit when we talk about our past, but we're Midwest kids, grew up in Michigan, and you played cards. That's what you played. Euchre, you played poker, you played rummy, you played Michigan rummy, you played all those games growing up, right? And hearts and spades, and that was kind of what that's what you did when you got with your family. You played cards. So we love designing card games, and you've had an opportunity to do quite a few over the years, and it's something that I think that we take pride in, right? The fact that as designers we can do a little bit of a thinky card game, and be a little bit different, right? I mean, and still have an opportunity to do those in a way that I'll be honest, as a designer, we're lucky, we have jobs and families, and designing is a hobby. You don't make a lot of money off card games. They're not your return on investment isn't really there from a perspective of like if that's what you're after. So I think a lot of designers that are doing this as a job, right, focus on the bigger packages. We're fortunate that this is our hobby. We love doing it, and that lets us do these card games that they can be very well received sometimes and sometimes not. And then but still, it's so fun to do because I love card games.
Awesome. James asks, Michigan Rummy, is there a difference with that variant?
Yeah, so Michigan Rummy is actually a I'll say a board game almost. It's got this big it's a gambling version of Rummy basically. So there's a couple different things. It's kind of like a contract Rummy almost. It's been a long time since I played that one. But yeah, it's a sort of a localized, there's like a poker hands and you're putting pennies in a pot, and it's fun. It's one of those ones that, like, my grandma played with us over and over again as we were growing up that I had probably haven't played in 15, 20 years. I should look it back up because I used to love that game.
Nice. All right, Joe, Abby, what you got for Matt?
You want to go first?
Ladies first.
Can someone just note that he called me a lady?
Yes.
It's
yes,
record.
I did. I'm being nice to you today.
First, potatoes before poofs. How about that?
Here we go. What is your go-to player color?
So I like non-color colors. So black, white, gray, nude. Those are my preferences. I can't say why. I just always have. And then if those aren't available, then I would take the most non-standard color, orange, purple, things like that. So I tend to avoid blue because Ben is always blue. So blue's like my enemy when we game. And then, otherwise it's, if it's like blue, green, red, yellow, I'll generally end up with red because my mom likes to play yellow and Ben likes to play blue. So like red and green are kind of innocuous. So I'll go red in that setting. But if I can, I'm always going to choose, black, white, nude, silver, gray, things like that.
Interesting. I feel like we need to have a little tally of everybody's favorite player color, because it feels like everyone's been giving something specific. So that's really cool.
Yeah, we should. That's definitely a unique answer. Non-colors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I knew why too. Like I generally, I don't know if I see them better. Like I think it started because I tend to compartmentalize information, especially when playing games, and they generally, if those colors are a player color, they're not on the board anywhere. Like I totally get why, as a person that makes games now, I know there's only so many colors you can do, especially, we're very cognizant of colorblind friendly, things like that. So you are sometimes limited in how you can do colors for things that don't have symbols and don't have numbers and things on them. So you're going to have a blue player piece still have blue things on the board. I just love that the white and the gray and the black and the nude tend to stand out a little bit better.
That makes sense.
Yeah, at least somewhere in here, whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Cool. All right, Joe.
All right, so you kind of already delved into your past a little bit as far as playing card games, but how did you wind up getting into more strategic games like board and hobby games?
Oh, for sure. So we have literally the classic, origin story for board games. I mean, I remember getting out of college. I graduated college in '99, and a few years after that, I played Catan with some buddies of mine from college. And I thought, oh, that was fun, and then thought nothing else of it for years. And then probably in 2006, or I can't remember what exact year that was. Was Catan? What year did that come out? 2001?
Gosh.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go look. I think it is 01 or 02.
Yeah.
I'm curious of my own knowledge.
Yeah.
Yep. No, me too. No worries. It was pretty new when I first played it, and again, that was with a couple buddies from college who I haven't seen in a long time since then. And then after years of actually, we kind of, this was before my girls are old. They're the oldest of our kind of friend group and family group. So they're senior in high school and college. So they're born in 04 or 05. And before that, we were playing poker almost exclusively. That was kind of when we got together as family or as friends, we'd play poker. And then at some point in that process around 02, 03, 04, 05, we began to play Catan. And one of my brother-in-law, who's funny because he's actually, of all the people in our family that game, he's the most anti-gaming. I think he found his buddy introduced him to Catan. He thought, oh, this is kind of fun. He introduced it to all of us, and we just fell in love with it. And we played Catan exclusively for probably 2 years. We didn't know other games existed. We would get together, and instead of playing poker, we played Catan. And then at one point, Ben found BGG. Literally.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, probably 07, 08, somewhere in that neck of the woods. And then we found, Puerto Rico and Power Grid and, Dominion was, relatively new when we first started, and that we just started playing these other games. And you kind of like went back then. The top 100 was pretty static, relatively. Agricola and all those kind of things that playing games in the 2007, 8, 9 range. Those top 2,500 games, we started going through the list and just buying a couple at a time and trying them. So that was really what led to, sort of us playing hobby games, was just, frankly, finding them in the first place. Like we didn't know they were there until we did. And it was because of Catan and then BGG. And then we had a few buddies at work who were into it. So we started playing at lunchtime. We would play Dominion for weeks at a time. We would play every day at lunch for 40 minutes. Cause you could play with 5 of us, you could play 2 games of Dominion in 40 minutes. Cause we hauled, you're just like, and you're just ripping cards back and forth. And we did that for, so many months, because it was just fun, and to the point where we were actually being like, we called it we're all engineers, so we called it reductive Dominion. So the more popular a card was, we would remove it. So if for example, Minion, if Minion got played a game and everyone bought a Minion, next game Minion's out. And then we slowly reduced, we had Dominion, I think, in Intrigue, and we reduced it down to every popular card was gone. So now you're trying to make the best you can with all the cards that no one ever bought. It was really fun, actually.
That's great.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah, I do like that about Dominion, that it's so versatile like that.
Yep. So that was kind of just, that was sort of what led us into, the hobby space, was just finding Catan and then just discovering BGG and all the other games. And we didn't have a game store. There wasn't a friendly local game store at that point. One had kind of come and gone in that era because it was pretty new, and then finally there's been one that's been around for a while since then that we found a little bit. We're kind of on the edge of the suburban area of Detroit, so you have to go a little bit farther, kind of into more populated areas, I think, to kind of get to kind of, back then especially, what you needed to support a game store. So it was a while before we found our FLGS, frankly. So at that point, it was just buying games online, cool stuff and all those other types of sites back then, and just trying. We would just buy them blind. All right, they say the BGG says Power Grid's good. We bought Power Grid, things like that.
That is awesome. And for the record, 10 was 1995.
Okay. So yeah, it had been out for, I think I played it probably 2000, 2001. So it had been out for a while at that point. That makes sense.
Wow. All right, Matt, do you prefer co-op or competitive games?
Competitive, 100%. I don't mind co-op. I like co-op in the right setting, but generally, when I'm playing, I admit, maybe it's kind of my old sportiness, but I'm playing to win, right? I enjoy the experience, and I want to have a shared awesome experience, but I also want to beat whoever I'm playing against. So, part of that fun for me is figuring out, okay, how do I make the best possible moves to, get to where I need to get to, and then do it just better than that person. So that's why I tend to prefer competitive games. I do like a co-op, my my parents and I will occasionally play one, and there's some games like The Crew that are just so brilliant. That one we'll play even though it's co-op. But for the most part, I prefer competitive. But I think co-ops have their place. I think they're fun too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Abby, what you got?
What's something you wish would improve or change in the board game hobby?
Great question. So, I think there's an obvious answer that I think, all of us are working toward, right, which is just better inclusion and making sure that, when you have an opportunity to, raise a voice that needs raising, you do it. And I see that even as, I can remember going to cons, even in 2013, which was probably been our first con, and, everyone was me. And then that's changed a lot, even in the last, 4, 5, 6 years. And I think it can get better. So, but I think that's the answer that's the right answer, because it needs to be that way everywhere, frankly. But also, I think, from a perspective of a board game publishing company, I do think that we're in a place where, we're all balancing this kind of strange sort of bubble that came out of the pandemic. There's all these companies, and I think that, everybody that has an opportunity to make a game should be able to make a game. But what I do think is that we're in a weird spot where, I think of folks like you who do content creation, and what you do takes so much time and effort and work, and you do it because you love doing it. And that's almost not fair, because it's, people are relying on your love of what you're doing, to spend your personal time to do this. And I'm like, gosh, how many other, multi-billion-dollar industries rely on, people to do things because they want to, not because they, not, I don't want to say have to, but like, I think there's a weird thing right now with board games where we're big enough that people should be compensated for their efforts and time, yet we're not there for some reason, and I haven't figured out why. So, that's kind of a big answer. Sorry, I know it's a little bit.
No, I think it's great, and I will say I have appreciated all of the time that you have sponsored my stream and other content creators' stream, like from Motor City Gameworks. It is noticed that publishers like Motor City have been able to value our time and our effort. So, just from me personally, that's a big thank you for doing
No,
that.
I because I do. I obviously no one can watch all of it. Maybe James, but the rest of us, I guess, can.
Definitely James.
So you try to pick up, and you try to interact with people that you like, and people that you've met, and people that you've interacted with that you've had positive experiences with. And I want, just like I want everyone that wants to design a game to design a game, I want everyone that wants to create content to create content. It's just, I'm struggling a little bit, kind of the inside looking out, so to speak, I guess you could say, with making sure that the board game industry takes care of its folks. And I think that we don't always do a good job, and I think we've used the excuse for a long time that's a lot of, and I get it. Like Motor City Gameworks is Adam, Ben, and I, and again, like I said, it's not our job. We're not full time. We all have jobs, and there's a lot of folks like us. But there's also plenty of companies that are real companies with real money and real reach. And I'm not, I want to encourage them to use that reach and use those resources to make sure they're supporting the industry in general.
Awesome. Well said, Matt. Well said. Joe?
All right. Do you have a favorite fan experience, like someone you met like in a convention or personally that you were just like, oh my god, I can't believe I met this person?
Boy, not so much board games, honestly. Like I would say. So you mean like me meeting somebody that I admire?
Yeah, like designer wise, or like someone like, oh my god, I can't believe I met this person.
So so in board games, I would say my favorite one's Barry Sanders. That's kind of a side note, if those of you that are familiar with Barry Sanders. But
we'll take that too.
Yeah, I was at a gas station and he was in front of me, and I tried to play it cool, and then he was just kind of standing around, and I kind of said, "Hi, Barry," and he's like, "Nice shirt." I'm like, "Thanks, Barry," and that was my whole interaction. And it was like, oh, yes,
that's like, awesome.
Yeah, it was a Scooby-Doo T-shirt. So but yeah, I would say at a convention, Ben and I sat down, and we literally just had come in from the food trucks, and we're just looking for a place to sit inside the Gen Con, kind of that little. There's like a lobby area that's on. This is probably 2014 or 15, where if you all do Gen Con, there's a distinct jump in my memory of it, where the food trucks were sort of, I'm not going to say unknown, but were sort of like lesser, like secondary to like the restaurants and the food court, and then they blew up, and then that was like they were the primary food source, and then so we had come back inside. I say that as a side note. There's actually really sneaky food trucks over by the stadium. By the way, for those of you going to Gen Con, don't get in line with those. The 30 food trucks right outside the door. Take a little walk to the stadium, and there's like no lines. But we'd come back in, and we sat down at a table, and we're just kind of chatting and eating, and we look over, and it's Bruno Cathala, and he's just sitting there by himself, eating lunch. And Ben kind of said, "Hey, I don't want to bother you. You're eating. Let's just want to say, hey, big fan, kind of thing." And he couldn't have been nicer. He sat and talked to us for about 20 minutes and talked about how he, because you think a guy like him, theoretically is a full-time designer, and he wasn't still at that point. I mean, this is probably around Seven Wonders Duel, things like that, right? He had done some pretty big titles, and he was still, working at a regular job and designing games on the side. And it was just kind of interesting to have, that kind of interaction with somebody that, you'd played so many of their games, and I had a chance to meet like Martin Wallace, and, he was kind of, sort of very passingly, but again, someone whose name you've seen so many times on these boxes that you played. So it was cool. I can remember, our entire first couple of years, it was a blur, because we came into Origins like 2012, I think it was, or 13. And this was after Fleet had kickstarted, excuse me, and was just releasing, and we didn't know anybody, and we didn't know anything. I can remember coming into the Eagle Griffin booth, and we were just going to hang out at the booth and just help them sell games basically, or play Fleet if they wanted. Like, they had a little table for us. If someone wanted to play Fleet, we'd play Fleet. And then right next to us was a Doctor Who booth, but I had no idea what it was. It was this giant blue phone booth. I'm like, what is the blue phone booth over there? And that weird robot that looks like it's like a cheese grater. Like, what am I looking at here? So I was like, that's Doctor Who. I'm like, what's Doctor Who? Like, I had this like nerd, sort of like I was a wizards and fantasy guy. Like, I grew up. I always joke around. This is kind of one of my favorite things about board games now is that I say, I'm 45 years old. So in the 90s, you kind of had to pick. Like, you had to, I never played D&D. I never played Magic because I chose baseball. I wasn't very good at it, but I loved baseball. And you couldn't do both. I mean, you could, but you weren't encouraged to do both back then. Like, you sort of had to choose your team, right? And I chose the kind of sports team, even though I was still reading, all my dragon wizard novels all day, and I would carry them around school and stuff. And then as I got older, I realized, well, that was silly. Why did I have to choose? But then nowadays, I think folks are so much better at letting you have all those experiences, right? You can be an athlete and play Magic. You can, be the cool kid and still play D&D and all those kind of things that I missed out on a little bit, that going back I would have loved to have done. So I feel that same way about just kind of looking at the kind of the modern hobby game space. And those one of the things that we're doing well, I think, is sort of making it something that everybody can do as part of a no matter who they are, what or where they came from.
That's awesome. And those were some big names too, Matt.
Yeah.
Martin Wallace, Bruta Cathala,
I don't know that Martin Wallace would. I don't know that he'd remember me. Like, it was a group that he kind of got pulled in, and we talked to him for a little bit. It was fun though. But I mean, I would say Bruno Cathala was our most say intimate. We've met some cool people, like when you pitch games and stuff. And it's funny. I can think back to meeting like Elizabeth Hargrave. When she was at Unpub and we were at Unpub, and. Mm-hmm. I don't think I got to play Wingspan, but boy, I can't imagine having played Wingspan and then seeing what it turned into. Because
no kidding.
What an incredible game! And she was literally at Unpub convention with the rest of us schlubs, just playing it with strangers, right? And I mean, how cool is that? Possibly the biggest game since Catan. Was at this neat little convention of designers. So,
yeah, that's pretty cool. So speaking of kind of like big names and stuff, Matt, is there someone that you've looked up to as a mentor who has aided you in your professional journey?
For sure. So I think the person that's aided us the most, honestly, is Chris Kirkman from Dice Hate Me Games. He is somebody that we met early on, and because honestly, he played Fleet and really liked it, and it was back when he was doing, he was married at the time, and they were doing their own publishing company as well as using the podcast that they had, and their sort of, I think he's a writer as well, as a way to sort of talk about their board game processes and their publishing. And they did a game called Carnival, and then Viva Java, and these kind of cool games. So he was one of the first people that we met, honestly, coming into sort of as a couple of no ones who just had kind of got lucky with Fleet a little bit to some extent, and then saw some success. And he's one of the people that really helped us sort of understand what the hobby was, and introduced us to other people, and really made us feel comfortable at conventions, and introduced us to his friends and other people within within the industry that we become able to be call friends now. And they he and some of the folks that he worked with back then were again very positive with Fleet. And honestly, the owner of Eagle Griffin, a man named Rick, he took a chance on us too. Like, he did probably 6 or 7 of our games in a row, and because he thought we were good designers, and he just kind of let us do our thing. Not everything we did with him was a hit. Some of them were distinctly not hits, I guess, to put it nicely. But we also had a few that did very well. So it was he gave us a lot of opportunities. He and his wife Joanne are both very nice people, and were very good to us.
Nice, very nice. All right, Abby.
What is your favorite game night snack?
So I am old school, and then I just love plain chips. Like, I love all salty snacks. By the way, that's not a short list, but I just love a classic. We have a company, a local Detroit company called Better Made, who makes an excellent classic potato chip. And then I also love kettle chips, like plain kettle chips too. Yeah, Abby, you would know Better Made.
Yep.
And so, given the choice, I mean, I certainly listen. I'm not I don't turn down any food, as it turns out. But salty snack. The chip lane is my favorite. Like you have to be a little careful, right? Because chips leave residue. You got to do a little pants wiping, in between turns and stuff. But it's that's my go-to if I have a choice.
Abby, you want to follow up with that follow-up question?
Yeah, what's your favorite game night drink?
I am going to be so boring here. So I'm a straight up water person. I drink tons of water. I love Coke and Pepsi, but I don't drink them anymore. I got old and gave up caffeine. And I've never been an alcoholic drinker. I'm not like a teetotaler. I don't have a problem with it. I drink once or twice a year maybe, but very, very irregularly. Mostly just a vodka and Coke at a wedding maybe. So unfortunately for me, boring answer. It's always water, 100% of the time. So I do this. I get a bottle at the beginning of the week, and all week long I just keep refilling it, 10 times a day, and then till it gets like so worn out, like it gets crusty, and then I'll recycle it and get another one.
Hey, nothing wrong with water. Nothing wrong with water.
Nope, not at all.
Joe?
Not at all. All right. Do you have a favorite designer or someone's game you just go to and are just like, this is my jam?
I do, and I'm gonna say it's because he's so diversified. That's a better way to put it. And that is, hold on, I wanted to point to it because it's my favorite game too. Oh, where is it? Darn it!
Oh, not you.
Yeah, my favorite game is, I'm going to give you a hint. It's Galaxy Trucker, and the reason that's my favorite game is because it's so different from everything else that I like. I love the Italian crew, right? All the stuff they do. The Coimbra and golly, I'm drawing. Marco Polo and Newton and all those, and all those cool games. But because of how unique, with Codenames and Galaxy Trucker and Dungeon Pets, and so all that to say, it's Bloody Chavala. That's what I'm getting at. Sorry, long way to say, he just, it's to me the fact that the same person could have done Codenames, which is one of the greatest word games ever made, and then Galaxy Trucker, which I love so much. It's just incredible to me. Like that, and plus he's got he's got some other good heavy Euros and some card games, and I would say it's because I love Galaxy Trucker so much that it's my favorite. And then there's always folks like Uwe Rosenberg who's done so many great games, and I love Bahanza. It's one of my favorite card games of all time, and I love Patchwork, and I like some of his Euros too. So, but I think Vlada Chevali is probably the person who I just am the most impressed by, just as a designer.
Yeah, that's I love that answer. So it's funny that you mentioned Codenames being one of the greatest games ever. I do enjoy a game of Codenames every now and then. It's not my go-to, but I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But when are you familiar with CGE and their streaming channel at all?
I believe I met the person digitally. Met the person who, at least for a while, was running their channel. Like I think I did a stream with them. Otherwise, I'm not familiar. No.
Okay, yeah, I am talking about Ray because she's a friend of mine. So when I
was it with you, Joe? Was I on a stream with you and Ray, and I'm gonna say maybe Amanda?
It might have been possible. Have been possible. I gotta go back and look. But anyway, so I was hanging out with her at this past Shucks, and she was telling me a story about how Vlada came up with Codenames, and it was so not exciting. So if you don't want me to
no, I want to know.
Okay. Yeah, because I told this story to a buddy of mine who we had on the show, who's also a game designer, and he was so disappointed. So I'm gonna say the disclaimer before I ever tell the story again. So apparently, Vlada came up with Codenames as a complete joke, 100% joke. Like he was sitting around a bar with a couple of his buddies, and he was writing words on napkins. And he was with some of the CGE folks, and they were doing this game, and he's like. And they were like, hey, we should totally publish this. So yeah, the idea of Codenames came from him writing words on a napkin, and he didn't even intend it on being a thing.
I love that the bar napkin was because that's such a cliche, right? Like, the back of the bar.
Yeah.
But it was real. I think that's great. I just, because you're chasing, even as a designer, Ben and I and Adam as well, have been very fortunate. We've been very successful in this. I mean, we kind of joke around that we're sort of the equivalent of like AAA players, if you know baseball at all.
Yep.
Like we're not Vlada or Uva, but like we're pretty good. We do pretty well. And it's our stuff we've had games that have sold 10, 20,000 copies, and that's awesome. But to think the idea that like a million selling game was just, I don't want to say a throwaway idea, but that's really what you're chasing sometimes. Is you're chasing just this little hook or the little kernel of an idea that it doesn't seem like much all the time when you do it. And Ben and I always say that and the best thing about Adam for us is that we tend to dismiss our own ideas quicker. We tend to move quickly between whether an idea is good or bad and kind of getting to the point where we dismiss ourselves. Not because we're not like positive or think we're not confident designers. Quite the opposite, actually. Sometimes I think it's because we have such a process we focus on that if we don't like something initially, we don't see it through. We're like, okay, we'll do something else instead, right? We'll come up with another idea and move on. And sometimes I think there's a good to have another voice that can say, hold on, that's worth looking at some more.
Yep, and that's exactly what happened. Like, didn't even think twice, and then they're like, no, we should publish this, and then the rest is history.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I will mention a couple comments in the chat. Legends DM says, Matt, I just got Galaxy Trucker for 50% off on a Black Friday sale.
Nice.
Yeah, got some love for Ray from CGE. No Soul No Prop says Ray is the golden Labrador amongst all of us mutts.
That's a fair comparison.
That is a fair comparison. James loves some AAA baseball. He said his local team is about 20 miles away.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And Legend says he loves Three Sisters, but Farmer Edith is so mean. LOL.
must be a solo player. Yeah, I will say, just as a quick aside for maybe for Legend specifically, we actually finally went away on the solo mode for French Quarter, which is our next game after Motor City. We went away from because the Motor City auditor is auditor. So Farmer Edith is actually named after Ben's daughter, and Auditor Emma is named after my oldest daughter. And she's the role of the auditor, which is very similar to the role of Farmer Edith, where she just wrecks your stuff, and makes it hard for you to get things done. So French Quarter is right now it's Mayor Carly, which is named after my wife, and she is very nice. All she does is have a little party, and you just can't visit that area of the French Quarter while you're doing your thing. So no destroying, no crossing boxes off, no getting in your way as much. I mean, she gets in your way. That's kind of the point of a solo mode, but not quite as devastatingly mean as Edith and Emma can be. That's a fact.
I do remember streaming Three Sisters, and I had Ilya and Tyler on from Cavre, and Ilya would always tell me, don't forget to move Farmer Edith like on the rondelle board, because I would always forget. And he's like, don't forget. And I'm like, I just picture like a little Jiminy Cricket on my court, on my shoulder, like Farmer Edith. So.
And they both are so great too. Like they've been super supportive of our stuff, which we've loved. And, they did some content for Motor City for us. That was awesome. So it's cool.
Yeah. Very, very cool. All right, Matt, do you have a favorite game mechanism?
I used to love any kind of, like, we'll say card play, like deck building and hand management. Deck building, I say not as much anymore. What I've found is I don't always love deck building inside other mechanics, right? Like, or as part of a larger package. I love those classic, Dominion and some of those kind of games, but I never really loved the games that used deck building inside of a larger game. But what I really do love is a good hand management mechanic, whether that be like Rococo, where you're sort of doing the way you're kind of drifting through your hand in that game. Like, you're not, I don't want to call that, it's not, to me, that's not deck building, because your cards are, somewhat ordered, like the way you play them. They're going to shuffle, but you're going to see all of your cards multiple times. So it's more about, building a hand each turn and how you buy that card into your hand and what you can get rid of cards in kind of like a way that you would think of deck building. But to me, that's, more of a hand management thing, and I love that. I would say, sorry, that's my fifth. I would say like Coimbra has a little bit of that too, though it's more tableau. And I do obviously love that as well. I mean, Fleet, our first game was a tableau builder, and that's just because it's fun. It's fun to have something in front of you and get to use it. right? That's kind of, even like with our roll and rights, that's kind of what we were after. So the idea is you do all of these neat things, and you're buying things, or you're investing in things, or you're trying out a different card or a different box, different space, and then you get to actually use it. That's the fun part. You get to actually kind of run your engine, so to speak. So that's kind of cheating because I gave you two answers, but those are my two answers.
We'll take it.
No, it's not
It's
cheating at all.
fine.
Not cheating at all. We love the extended answers. We love getting all this stuff from our guests. So you're good.
Yeah, this is totally great. All right, Abby, what you got?
What is the last game you backed on any crowdfunding?
Oh golly, I'm gonna look right now because
Yes, I love
I-
this.
I tend to I back a lot, but amongst friends, I can say that I do a lot of times. I do back at $1 a lot of times, or $10, just as a show of support, so I
Right.
can tweet about it and talk about it. Only because my game collection is relatively static, because Adam buys all of the games, and I don't play games here super often. It was Portents, Chris Chan, and New Mill Games. So Chris Chan actually is a designer from New York, and he just moved to Detroit. And I haven't had a chance to meet him in person yet, but he just moved here, and he did a game with New Mill, who's Daniel Newman and Tony, if you know who they are.
Yeah.
And it was Portents is like a 2-player abstract game. They'll look really fun. And again, I don't play 2-player games, frankly. It's just not part of my my game experience. Because my wife is not so into it. And if I'm playing with my parents, we play lighter stuff. If I'm playing with Adam and Ben, we tend to play heavier stuff. So, but I did actually back that one just because those are folks that I know very well, and I wanted to kind of support that. So that's the last game I backed. I would say fully, in the sense of where I actually bought a copy. I've backed some other stuff. Again, I try to pay attention. If there are people that I've met or people that I know, I love to try to, even if I know I'm not going to play the game. I still like to give $1 and tweet about it, so I can at least try to help a little bit as much as I can. Or if there's a $10 pledge, I'll give a $10 pledge. So I think I've backed like, golly, 7. What am I at? Like 15, 500, 300, 400. I don't know, some hundreds of games now over the years. So it's it's fun.
Cool. Very good.
Fantastic. All right. Is there a piece of advice or anything specific you would tell someone just starting out in game design?
Of course, absolutely. I love this question because I think it's an answer that actually fits a lot of things in life, but game design specifically. And to me, that is, find someone that you trust and work with them. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I strongly believe that no person knows everything, obviously. So getting somebody else involved immediately that you can be honest with, and that you trust, and that you can be comfortable with, allows two things, right? It allows not only, frankly, some of it's work. I love game design, but sometimes it is just work. Like, you're doing things that you don't want to do all the time. It's not all fun, right? Sometimes you got to make that proto, and you got to fill that thing out online. You have to do things that aren't necessarily fun. So having someone to split that with a lot of times is great. And frankly, just the ability to talk through something. Like, I would never have done a game design without Ben, simply because I'm never going to sit at the table by myself and make a game, because I don't work that way. I can't stare at something and just talk with you. I have to look at someone and verbalize and say, what about this? And what about this? And what if we try this? And I need that interaction. But even beyond that, even my my need of that, I just think that the idea that you can have somebody, and not only that, frankly, from a game design perspective, you can immediately play your own stuff. And there's nothing more important in game design than playing your game. It's so easy to get stuck in rules and theory, and the idea that, okay, we're going to try this, and you can get caught on these little sort of, you're going to iterate thing. I mean, in your head, you're iterating. You're saying, what if it was one more here, one less there? And you do all that, and it's all in your head until you actually make it and put it in front of you and do it. You're not going to know what you have. So having someone else to share that with, and someone else to to be able to be available, right? We can play against each other. We can play 2 hands each. It's invaluable. I don't know how anybody designs by themselves, because then you have to go to game nights, and you have to bother your family all the time, play my proto, please, and you have to you're dragging it to people are like, I want to play a real game tonight, guys, leave us alone. We try to avoid that, because we my girls are older now, like I was talking about earlier, but Ben's got 5 kids, and they're from 7 to 13. So his time is pretty tough to get it's tough for him to carve out time slots right now. So we we barely get to play real games, it seems. So when we do, we want to actually play the new Uva game. We want to play the new, heavy Italian heavy Euro. So when we're designing it, the fact that we can design together, now we have Adam as well, and lets us just immediately start playing things. So I say, if you're listening to that whole spiel, the two pieces to remember are: get a partner you trust and play your stuff immediately. Don't dilly dally. Don't wait for it to be perfect. I know it's super easy for me to say, but it's people get stuck trying to make something exactly how they want it to be. Get it on paper, cut it out. Don't make it pretty. Just white paper if you have to, and pencil. I don't care how you do it, but get it on the table and play it, because you won't know if it works or if it's fun until you do.
Awesome.
Good piece of advice.
Yeah. Legend says, I love playing the games I make, but only make it for friends to play usually.
Yep. Sure. No, that's too. I mean, I can remember, I'm not a big forum person. I only go into the forums, like even on BGG, to like answer questions about rules. I'm not in there commenting and having discussions and things like that. There's a time in the past where I did a little bit of that, but it's not really part of my life anymore. But I can remember people arguing about what a game designer is. Like, a game designer is someone that makes a game. If you made a game, you're a game designer. So get yourself the badge if you want to. Get your P&P out there, or don't, or like Legend said, play with your friends only. It doesn't matter. As long if you're doing it because you enjoy doing it, then do it however you enjoy it, whether it's sharing with public or not. There's no wrong answer there. You just you do the part that makes you comfortable and that makes you feel good, and do that thing.
Do it. Just do it. Who said that?
Just do it.
One of our previous guests said, "Just do it."
They did.
Who was that?
Was it John D.
I think it might have been Peter or John, one of those two.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so funny, Matt. Because literally, we had other game designers on here recently, and they just said, "Just do it." So there you are.
Peter and John, I both excellent folks. I met both of them.
Yeah. Okay, so then going in tandem with that, Matt, what is a motivation that keeps you going when it comes to designing games?
Yeah, so right now it's just, I think it's twofold, if I'm being honest. Like, there's a part of me that wants a hit, right? I want to make Wingspan, right? I want to make Catan. I want to retire. I want to stop having to have a real job. But that part's pretty small because that's not, likely to happen, honestly. Most games, even our very successful games, I would say, like I said, have sold 10, 20,000 copies, which is incredible, but you have to sell, hundreds of thousands of copies or millions of copies to truly, to retire, so to speak. So that's always in your head, right? I don't care what you're doing, right? Everybody wants success. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that and saying, hey, this is a goal. It's not, and for me, it's not the monetary part. It would just be the having to stop working part, which I guess comes from the money, so to speak. But that's not what motivates me to design games on a day-to-day basis. That's always something that I would love to achieve. But really, it's because it's still fun. I was never a creative person in the sense of, I wasn't an artist or a writer or a singer or musical. I didn't do band, and I didn't know I could be creative. I'm an engineer. I tend to value math and efficiency is kind of how my brain works. I see things, and I see how to get it to be the most streamlined as possible, and that has led me into being a good game designer. But it isn't something that lends itself to creating an initial thing. So Ben most of the time, or Adam now, are the ones that are creating the initial idea. So, I tend to be more involved in the back end, or not the back end, but immediately afterwards. But I need something to play with, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't have that spark necessarily where it's like I can make the thing, but give me the thing and I can do things with it. There's been a few games that I guess were my idea, but it's just the sense of getting something that people are going to be able to enjoy. And it's interesting because I don't care if you've designed 2 games or 100 games, or in our case, say 20, 25 games. Somebody out there thinks your thing's their favorite thing, and it's mind-blowing to me. Like, every one of our games, I've seen someone say that's my favorite game, and I just I cry. Like, I'm like, that's like that's incredible. Like, how you made a thing that's somebody's favorite thing, and y'all, you made a show that's someone's favorite show. And how cool is that, right? How cool is it that you impacted somebody else in a way that, even in a small way, like, this isn't, you're not going to cure cancer or change their lives, but you impacted their life in this neat way that says, you did something that they so enjoyed, they took the time to go say, I love this thing, and I famously, I'm very resilient to negative comments. They don't bother me in the least, because I'm not emotionally committed to my own game designs. their products. I get them out there, and if someone doesn't like them, that's totally their right to not like them. It doesn't bother me at all. You can tell me that it's the worst game you've ever played. Great. I'm just glad you played it. It doesn't in any way impact. Like some of it's like that like Midwestern male confidence. I got it, but I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. But I love that someone loves the thing I did, and that's why it keeps you doing it.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's good to hear.
Yeah. No Soul No Prop says, I'm the exact same way when it comes to art. I have a hard time with initial design, but I can perfect someone else's idea.
Yep. It's a different skill. It really, really is. And, I think, again, I wouldn't be doing this today without Ben simply because I don't have that, whatever it is that lets people have that kernel. I don't come up with the kernel very often, but I'm going to get it to the end, but I need someone else to kind of help me get that first part going. So that's just different skills, right? Everyone's got different skills.
Yeah.
Find somebody that's compatible with you and, do your thing.
Yeah. And thank you, Tokra, for the hydrate. So everyone on camera here, take a quick sip.
Yep, got our swig. We're good.
Cheers, everybody. All right, Abby, back to you.
Yes. Horizontal, vertical, or if it fits, it sits.
As you can see behind me, I'm generally, if it fits, it sits. I
was gonna say, I mean, I would hope that you would be truthful, so we could not be like,
yeah,
you can see your shelves.
You can see it. It's funny because as much as I am, I'm an engineer, and I do tend to be very, I'll say logic based, and I tend to be very efficient based. I am not one of those like A-type super organized folks. I'm just not. I don't see the value in it. Like I'm not like, have you ever seen like W. Eric Martin will post those videos where he like plays some big game and just dumps it into the box?
Yes.
I'm not that, but I'm also not like make organizers either. Like I'm just put everything in a bag and dump it throw it in the box. That's future Matt will figure out how to unpack it, right? I'm not that worried about it. That's kind of so that's but again, everyone's different. I've got a buddy who's he's very much the organizer type, and everything's like I think he goes alphabetical if I remember correctly. It's wild, and that's great because you go to his place and you're like, I'm gonna play that game. Pull it out and you can pull it out. Everything's gonna be in its own little containers, and it's done. You set it up and you play. It's just not who I am.
Yeah, I remember watching some of those BGG videos, Matt and W. Eric Martin, just like, all right, we ready? And he just takes his arm and it's just like swipe, and I can just hear people just gasping on the other side of their screens, right? And they're like,
I probably fall into the category of that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I won't do it, but I'm closer to him than I am to organizer person.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. Or sleever. Those folks are not me.
Yeah. Joe?
All right. Time for my favorite question of the interview. Do you still consider yourself a player first, a designer second, or has the creative process overtaken the hobby aspect of gaming for you?
That's an excellent question, and it 100% has. So I love playing games, but I can't not be somewhat analytical while playing them, and I can't turn off that part of your brain that says, here's what I would have done, or here's why they did this. And I actually love I can remember, frankly, even before we designed Fleet, one of the reasons we designed Fleet was because, again, I keep saying about being an engineer because that's my life, or that's my how I see the world. And we were playing Race for the Galaxy, and it was like, well, it kind of stinks when you're playing Race for the Galaxy and you're going through defense and you don't get the Emperor Palpatine card, which if you're familiar with Race for the Galaxy, he like doubles your defense or whatever it is, So like I did all this work going for defense and never got that card, and that was frustrating. So part of that was like us analyzing. By the way, an incredible game. Like, and that's in no way. It's Race for the Galaxy is amazing. And but we're still analyzing it that way. We're even just amongst our group of friends from work who were playing this at our buddy's house. We played on Thursdays. I would literally go to work, and this is my girls were kind of on much of school, and they knew on Thursdays I wasn't going to be home because I'd go to work, I'd go to softball, and I'd go right to my buddy's house. We'd play games, and then I'd get home at 11 o'clock at night or whatever, and we would be playing these games, like, again, Race to the Galaxy is a good example, and we'd still be analyzing them and talking about why things were the way they were. Not even as designers yet, just as 4, 5, 6 people playing these games. But then as designers, when we first began to do Fleet, it was because literally that was the thing. Like, Ben's like, well, I wanted to be able to play a game with multi-use cards, but I wanted to do it where you had access to the good cards, right? The 6 power cards, basically, right? What would be what they'd be in Race to the Galaxy, and that was the idea behind the fleet licenses, right? They were going to be an auction, and they were always going to be available. And everyone had a chance at them, so there was never going to be you didn't draw into your scoring card. You had to go get it using your cards and your powers and stuff. So that was the initial inspiration behind the design, and that was from that point forward, it became sort of how you see things. I can't imagine being able to turn that off, honestly, at this point. I don't I don't ruin games. I'm not I don't sit there and analyze, well, that's a bad design decision, like be that person, because that person sucks. But I mean, like, I'm very cognizant of letting people enjoy their experience, but I know in my own head I'm constantly breaking it down and trying to see, I actually enjoy a lot in my own head figuring out and then talking about it afterwards. If people are interested in how do we get to the point where it's why do they make that decision as a game designer, and having that conversation. I love it.
Ah, that's awesome. And right as Matt was finishing up, we just got rated, friends. Hello, Kestrel. Thank you so much for joining us here on Community Connections. I'm Jess, and I am joined by the wonderful House of Meeple, Joe and Abby, and we are chatting.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in.
Yeah, we are chatting with game designer Matt Riddle, 1/3 of Motor City Gameworks, who designed games such as Three Sisters, Motor City, and the upcoming French Quarter. Cass, how was your stream? What did you play this evening? And thank you for giving that shout out to Kestrel and hanging out. Everyone that is on the screen is involved somehow in the tabletop gaming space, so we are just hanging out and chatting. Had to crash the lovely chatting. Good to see y'all. Cannot wait for French Quarter, says Panda. Very, very cool. Well, thank you everyone for coming in. If you have any questions for Matt, please feel free to drop them in the chat. But yeah, thanks again, Kestrel, for that raid. Okay, Matt, do you think the terms board game and tabletop are separate, or are they becoming interchangeable?
I would say they're interchangeable for me. I think that there's no reason to make a distinction. I think for a while there, tabletop gaming was, when you said tabletop games, you thought of minis and big map pieces and 3D terrain and all that cool stuff, which is something I'm not even remotely familiar with. I know it exists. I don't know how to do it. I've never done it. I played the HeroScape like one time and it was fun, but that's about my entire experience with what tabletop gaming from that perspective. And then board games was its own space that classically covered Monopoly and all those games we grew up with, Operation, and then has now grown to include the sort of strategic space that we all tend to play in, as well as the party games. To me, I think the two words have become interchangeable because all of that space is so melded now. You've got, I was playing Twilight Inscription, which I learned last weekend, and that was, you take a game like Twilight Imperium, which I played one time. That was one time more than I think I ever wanted to play it, and then you took it and turned it into this like roll and write game, and but you still had these beautiful character drawings and these these races and these awesome pieces of art on these cards while you were just like scratching off little circles with a pen. So like the mix of the idea that, okay, I can have these, and not to mention all the minis games, right, where you've gotten to the point now where you can have a 60-minute, 90-minute tabletop game that has these gorgeous miniatures and these things that you would think of in terms of the old Warhammer and things like that, and now they're in a box and you play for 90 minutes and think about all of Blood Rage and all those cool games, the CMON games, right, and and just the idea that those games all frankly have blurred that line between what you'd classically think of as a we'll call it a Euro game or strategic game and what would have been a minis game, and now you've got it all in one box, and that's because Eric Lane's a genius. But I mean, so just the idea that all those different things exist together now, and I see no reason to make a distinction. So I think either word, both words, either word, however you want to put it, is both applicable and completely something that I think you can use interchangeably.
Okay. Fair enough. Abby?
What's the most incredible bargain you've ever found on a board game?
Speaking of HeroScape, you can't. It's right above me here. Even though I've only played it one time, I got the HeroScape and then whatever the Valkyrie one is for like $5 at Salvation Army or whatever.
Whoa.
Or Goodwill or one of those types of stores. And I've only played them one time. I took them when my daughters were, I'm going to say 7 and 8, 8 and 9. We went to Hocking Hills, Ohio, which is this kind of weird little, not weird, it's actually very cool, but it's like Southern Ohio below Columbus, and it's like there's some trails you hike. I'm not going to call them mountains because they're hills, but there's like caves and a lot of natural beauty, and you kind of hike through it. And we had this little cabin we stayed in, and I dragged those down there, and I broke them out. We played them like one time, and I'm not sure they had fun, but we played with it, and they've been sitting on my shelf ever since. But I know they're worth, from a value perspective of, they have value. If I ever tried to sell them, I haven't, because it hasn't occurred to me. But so that was my best deal from that perspective. I would say the other best deal I ever got was I this copy right here of Ink and Gold I borrowed from my parents, like 10 years ago when they first bought a couple games before they knew what games were, and I've never given it back, and I've played it hundreds of times because I love Ink and Gold. So that's good value too.
That's too funny. And I'm surprised how many like bargain things you can find at like Goodwill or Salvation Army. And I just see like those random posts. It's like, look what I just got for like $5 or $10. And you're like, oh my goodness.
I get it to some extent, because I mean this, please take this, I don't mean this morbidly, I mean this very lightly and jokingly. When I pass, hopefully many years from now, my wife or daughters will be like, what are we doing with all this crap? They don't want it, right? Like, they're gonna just put it in a bag and take it to Goodwill, and then someone else will, they'll benefit from that, and they'll pay $1 for my copy of Small World, and good for them. I mean, it's kind of, so.
That's gonna be a good find for somebody.
Exactly, right. Someone's gonna walk in and see it, because they don't know what to do with them either. The Goodwill type places, they don't have any sense of value.
Yeah.
No, some of them do. Like, there's I think Abby can attest to this. When we used to live up further north in across from the Sound, like the Goodwill there, like they knew when they got a good hobby game. Like they charged $40 or $50 for it, because after a while they knew what they were getting.
And it was like retail was $60, and they were charging $50 for a very well loved copy of a game. And I'm like, I'll pay the extra $10 to not have my game smell like funk and like be half beaten to death.
Yeah, like I think once we saw like a copy of, I think it was Twilight Imperium 3rd edition, and I think they were trying to charge $110 for it. I'm like, I could get a copy of 4th edition for $120. Like, who are you kidding?
We just looked at each other and we're like, nope.
Yeah, that's a no for me, dog.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I will have a couple of comments before jumping in. First is from Daryl Andrews, and he says, I don't understand what's happening. I don't see Ben Pinchback.
Yeah, sorry, Daryl.
Yeah.
You only got half of us today.
Only half today. And we've got a question coming in from Reality, says, what is French Quarter about? Are you open to discussing it, even though it's not around
I would love to.
Cool.
No, I appreciate that. So, French Quarter is the 4th game, I'm going to say, in our loaded roll and write line. We kind of grandfathered Fleet in, even though it was Eagle Griffin games. And then we did Three Sisters, Motor City, and now French Quarter. And there's also actually a game called Durango that I can't talk too much about, that was one of Adam's he had that design up. That's being published by a European company, and then hopefully work its way over here. That also kind of fits in the series. But so French Quarter is a roll and write. It's a strategic roll and write. The difference between it and, like, say, Motor City, who obviously a few folks have played, but not many yet, and then say Three Sisters and Fleet Dice, is that it has a spatial puzzle. So it's literally about. It came from Ben's. He had gone to a wedding in the French Quarter, and he loved the kind of the idea that you're walking around New Orleans, and there's what's called a second line parade. There's like the jazz band and the person with like the big staffs and the costumes, and you're basically marching through the streets as part of your wedding. He thought that was like the coolest thing ever, and that was kind of like his original motivation behind figuring out how to make this game, was just around that second line parade. So what you're really doing, though, thematically, is you're visiting the French Quarter. You're visiting New Orleans. You're a tourist, and you're just trying to go see all the sights and see all the cool things, and visit the bars and restaurants and stores. So you're moving around the French Quarter. So like your 2 sheets, because that's what we do. And the one sheet is the French Quarter. It's like a map. And the other sheet is like the facade of a building. and that's kind of like your tracks, like we have in Fleet Dice and Three Sisters. Whereas you kind of work your way up the tracks, you get bonuses. Except for these bonuses are a little different in the sense that they're kind of like inspired by, like, say, Marco Polo. Which, if you play the old Marco Polo game, like, those bonuses are bonkers. Like, it seems like, wait a minute, this can't be right. Like, like, I don't have to roll dice anymore. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So like the bonuses are big, and they really impact gameplay, and that's kind of how they are in French Quarter. There's tracks of like several bonuses, a couple of them very minor, but the middle bonus on each track is like bonkers. And it's the nice thing is that it's a little bit lighter and a little bit more accessible. So the spatial puzzle is very fun, but it's easy. It's a nice way to kind of spread out, and you're trying to see the different sites in the city, and then you're trying to do that while obviously maximizing points because it's a game, and then you got to get points to win. So it uses a we jokingly call it a flip and roll and write, because you got to flip cards over and then roll colored dice, and the dice all match the cards. So like you have like 6 cards, orange, red, yellow, blue, whatever. And then you roll 6 dice, orange, yellow, red, blue, yellow, and the value of the die interacts with the card. And that determines the strength of your action, or what kind of action you can do, or what number you're going to write down on your map as far as the spatial puzzle goes. So that's a neat little kind of dice draft in the middle that you're all sharing while you're working on your sheets. So
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Awesome. Before you ask your question, I will give a couple more comments. Old Man Coaster says Three Sisters was fantastic. I love it. I like the sound of French Quarter already.
Thank you.
And Daryl says, hi, Matt, one of the great designers I feel like I learned from and grew up designing games. And then he says, I feel like we are in the same graduating class. I'm headed to New Orleans in January, so pumped to try out French Quarter. And he says, more bonkers powers. Yes, Marco Polo is brilliant.
I agree with Daryl, by the way. I do feel like we kind of grew up in that same, there's people that you sort of met early on. Daryl's one of them, and we met him at an early con and have sort of, say, grown in the industry together, right? We were all those young designers, not that young, but young enough, kind of hustling, trying to get your first sale. And I can remember, Daryl at those shows as well, kind of doing the same thing. And, I love seeing his success over the years, and it's great when you meet people that, people that are kind and generous with their time, and then you see them have success, and it just makes you feel good.
Yeah. All right, sorry, Joe. I took up some of your airspace.
Oh no, you're fine. I was going to get to the comments if you didn't. So we were on the subject before, so I'm going to ask: if you could redesign one game, what would it be?
Great question. So I think my favorite design that A, didn't go well, and B, I would like a crack at is Morocco, for a couple of reasons. A, the theme, we weren't sensitive to what was, how you do themes back then like we are now. I mean, it wasn't, I don't think it was anything that folks would be hurt by, but it was certainly not, well thought out. And frankly, that wasn't our theme, if I'm being 100% honest. Our theme was flowers, and it was changed by the publisher. That's okay. But what it was our love letter to Kinesia. We wanted to do a sort of abstract Euro with a very simple base mechanic, and then the game sort of grew as you played. And I think we accomplished that, but we accomplished it, I would say, to a point where the game was good but not great. And I would love to take a run at that game again and see if we can make it, A, go back to our original theme of flowers, and B, sort of take a crack at kind of understanding that we've got these couple of neat mechanics that work together, but can we do say that one more thing, right? One more thing that really kind of sells the game and brings it home. I mean, that game is on BGA now, and it's pretty fun on there, and folks are playing it. But I wouldn't mind taking one more crack at that one.
All right, love to hear it.
If this was your last day on Earth, what would your last dish be?
So I would say, I love so much food now. Like, I've gotten so much. I grew up pretty. I kind of joke with my mom that we had like chicken every night, and like baked chicken, like she would bake it in the oven, and back then it was on the bone because that was cheaper, and we were not, we didn't have a lot of money, or hot dogs. Like, I feel like we ate a lot, and tuna casserole. So I feel like that's all we ever ate. Like, I'm like, Mom, is that all you ever cook with those 3 things, like over and over again? But it's what we could afford, and B, I'm sure she cooked a lot more. I don't remember. So I say that to say, I spent a lot of time with very kind of basic, food tastes, and I've really grown a lot. And I love, love, love. So I'm from, being from Detroit. There's it's the second largest, like population of Middle East expatriates, right? Folks that have moved, from, a lot of Iraq, a lot of Iran, a lot of Libya, a lot of Lebanese, Lebanon, and they've come to Detroit, and I love Lebanese food. Love it, love it, love it. So it'd be hard for me to pass that up. Like if you could tell me that I could have a kebab sandwich with a nice giant bowl of garlic dip and pita, that'd be hard to turn down. I do also just love a classic cheeseburger. Like I'm pretty simple that way. Like I really, really like cheeseburgers. So I'm kind of waffling because I don't want to decide. So I'm going to go with the cheeseburger and fries because it's my classic. But I would say, my go-to lately has been, just because of where I work too in Sterling Heights. It's just like kind of how some places have, whatever their most local food is, like, whether it be greasy spoons or like pretzels if you go to Philadelphia or whatever. In Sterling Heights where I work, it's Middle Eastern food. It's Lebanese. It's funny too because some of them are Iraq, some are Lebanon, and depending on who you're with, they prefer one or the other. I love it all. So it's I would say, but I'm gonna go all that to say cheeseburger and fry.
Cool. James says have both.
Yeah, I would. I don't know, like I can't. I mean, I know not everybody likes meat. I respect that, but man, if you've ever had a good steak kebab, or like you get the big chunks of steak and the hummus, oh gosh, all wrapped in a pita, so good.
All right. Let's see. Oh, question in the chat. Daryl asks, are there any themes or ideas for a game that you wanted to make, but then someone else made it and decided to stop?
Interesting.
That is very specific,
I know
Daryl.
there has been. Yeah. No, that's a great question because I'm positive there has been. I'm struggling a little bit in remembering. I will say Pete Mott's, for example, was going to be called Songbirds, and then a game called Songbirds came out literally as we were, because that was with a Lookout Games from Germany, so they were working on development. It took a little bit of time, and while we had sold it to them as Songbirds, we ended up calling it Pete Mott. Or they changed the name to Pete Mott's because Songbirds came out in the U.S. under, I think, golly, it was a Japanese title, I believe, and they got brought to the U.S. by Daily Magic Games, I think. So they figured, we'll change the name to Pete Mott's. But that theme didn't change. Didn't really change, just the name. Oh, Stellar. So our game Stellar from Renegade Games, which is now about looking into space, right? It's about like looking through a telescope and looking at celestial bodies. Was originally lighthouses. And it was, if you look at the stellar map, it's still shaped kind of like a lighthouse.
Oh, wow.
Because originally what we were doing, yep. And what we were doing was we wanted to make a game about. So I would say we didn't stop because someone else did it. We stopped because the publisher kind of went, we don't like the way this looks. We think we can do something different that looks better. That was what Renegade decided. But we would love to make a game about lighthouses. We've just never quite been able to get one through. So that was originally, you had a lighthouse. And it was like you started off with a lighthouse, and then you were adding lighthouses to it. Like, and they were all Great Lakes. We're Michigan boys, and we were all the lighthouses in Minnesota and all the Lake Huron, Lake Ontario, Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, all these real lighthouses. We had pictures of them. Well, the problem was that you took this kind of neat, pretty picture, and then you covered it with individual little lighthouses. And when you were done, it wasn't really an attractive tableau anymore. It was a pile of lighthouses. They're like, we like what you're trying to do here, but we think we can make it an attractive picture at the end, which they did, frankly, with Stellar. But yeah, that was originally lighthouses, so that was one that we really wanted to do. We'd love to do a lighthouse game like that. We just haven't quite cracked it. So
interesting.
But to Daryl's actual question, I am positive we've changed themes or game designs before, but I'm just having trouble remembering off the top of my head which ones.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair to put you on the spot like that. Good job.
Yeah, it's
Daryl.
a good question though.
All right, Joe.
All right, another question from chat from James Raziel. What is one of the darlings that you had to kill to make a game better?
Great question. So we did I'm going to go back to Morocco. Actually, Morocco was actually part of our first attempt to make a giant, we'll say, Feldy kind of Euro where like everything interacts with each other.
Mm.
So basically, like I love Trajan. It's one of my favorite, kind of strategic games.
Mhm.
And the reality of it is, you've got this neat, the Mancala mechanic with all these areas that really don't actually have anything to do with each other, but they interact because he tells you they do, right? So if I go here and I get this little token, that token spends over here, and this little token spends over here, and I get a card. And so we tried to do that, and we had this really kind of neat game, and we never quite got it to work. And Morocco was actually one of those sections. So it was, you can imagine, like, the idea that you're sort of building this grid was one of like 5 larger, we'll call them mini games for lack of a better word, that were interacting via this mechanic that we had, where you were doing this kind of shared thing where I get one thing and everyone else, your neighbors, get other things, and you were kind of giving each other things throughout the course of the game, and then spending those in all these different zones. So we got pretty far with that game and really liked it, but it just never quite worked. So we had to take a real hard look and go, well, what do we actually love about this? And it was this one section of the game. So we took it and said, well, what if that's its own game? And that's kind of how we got to Morocco. So, but I will say, yeah, I mean, it was interesting. But I will say to that question though, and I kind of referenced this earlier a little bit. One of Ben and I's strengths and weaknesses is, and again, something that Adam's actually helped us out a lot with, bringing in a third designer, is that we are very, very quick to kill something if we just think it's going the way we want it to. Like, there's always more to work on, right? There's always another idea. So we don't get stuck on things, which I think can be a positive, but can also be sometimes maybe get rid of something you should have kept. But we're very, very quick to say, okay, this isn't really, this isn't optimal to how we want it to be. We'll just cut it and move on.
Hmm.
All right, that's a great answer.
Yeah. Abby?
What are your top 5 games for a weekend getaway?
I would say if I'm doing a weekend getaway, it's funny because it's probably the opposite, I think, probably of maybe what a lot of folks are going to say. Like, I'm not packing light games, I'm packing heavy games. Because if I'm going away for a weekend, hopefully it's with people that want to play heavy games. So I'm going to take Trajan, and I'm going to take Rococo, and I'm going to take, let's see. I'll still take a couple light things, like, I'll take Bonanza because I love Bonanza. Play that anytime, anywhere. Bonanza, excuse me. But then after that, I would probably take something new. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and say I'll buy a new, whatever the new hot heavy Euro is, and try that. And I'd bring that. Then for my 5th game, I'd bring Galaxy Truckers just in case I get to play it, because I can convince people to play against me. So that'd be my answer. Focus on those games I don't get to play very often, because when I do get to play lighter stuff, which I love, that's something that I can do a little more often. So the rarer part for me is getting to play those longer games.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way.
Yeah.
I agree. That reminds me of like things I should bring to PAX, because it's like I want to put stuff in my suitcase, but I also know that there's going to be a lot of like crossover, and PAX has a decent library, so you can just check out games on your own. But yeah, I get it. Totally get it.
I do miss that part. Sorry, Jess. When we first started doing
fine.
cons, we spent the first probably 2 or 3 Gen Cons in the Gen Con library because we didn't know anybody. And we would literally, it was Ben's brother Joe was with us, and sometimes like one other person, and we would just play something. And we would play a game, we would take a picture of it, and we'd go get something else. And this is, I say this sort of nostalgically because it was before we were busy, right? Before we had to, I don't say hustle in a negative way. I don't know, there's not like hustle culture, but like, when you're now, frankly, we do this a longer time. We've got things we have to do. We have meetings. We've got people to see. We have things that we have to do. Back then, we didn't. So we would, we play Fleet a little bit during the day. We would pitch a couple of games. Probably only had 1 or 2 designs to pitch at the time, and then we would just sit in the library and play games for 7 hours, and it was great. I miss a little bit of that. Honestly. We still play games. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not the same because now we're working. So.
Yeah. All right, Matt, do you design for yourself or do you design for your potential audience?
I would say at first we design for ourselves, and now we design for the audience. I think as we've grown as designers, we have a better understanding of, what our especially frankly with Motor City Gameworks, what the expectations are of people when they buy a game from that brand. and what they want in a game from Motor City Gameworks. I think we're more cognizant of that and try to design to that. But also, in general, honestly, like everything is a product at the end of the day, and I hate to make it sound that way, like it's like it's just a business. But you are ultimately trying to figure out who wants this thing. And while we want to design games that we like, we're also because we don't do this full time, we want to make sure we focus on things that we think have life, right, and have a chance to be successful. So with that in mind, we do tend to focus now, frankly, as on where it's going and what the audience is. So listen, if we have a good idea we fall in love with, we're going to design it, right? That's because that's what we want. We design games as fun, but we're still always cognizant of what the next step is and what the audience might be for that. So because the reality of it is, at the end of the day, no one knows nothing about nothing. We're all guessing, right? No one, if you knew what was going to be the next Wingspan, you'd design the next Wingspan, but you don't. So you're all just you're doing things because they're fun and you see how they go. But still, I think you can do that intelligently. You can do that with knowledge. You can do that with a focus on understanding where the market might be today.
Nice. All right, Abby.
Personally, for you, what number of games in your collection would you consider to be too many?
So I use physical space as my limiter. So if it doesn't fit on these shelves, I don't buy it. Or if I buy something that doesn't fit on these shelves, I'll get rid of something else. I don't know how many games I have. It's not hundreds. It's probably 100. But maybe I'm underestimating because I've never counted. But I literally use this one Calyx, right? It's just a Calyx, I think.
Mm-hmm.
As my limiter. So what I can fit on, and this includes, right, like behind my big head here, a couple shelves of our own stuff, right? So like I have wasted space of our own designs, a copy of the design that doesn't get to go to games I want to play necessarily. But and I use, so this is my how I control my game, my collection. But I will say honestly, like I'm very lucky in that I have a couple of friends who buy a lot of games, so I get to play relatively new stuff with them without having to make the purchase myself. And then we'll see as we kind of, as I get older, my girls get older, I have a little more free time, and I may try to do a few more, game night kind of things. I may start buying games again. But for the last 6 or 7 years, I have not bought a lot of games, honestly. So my collection's been relatively static. I'll buy, I get, like, my mom and dad will, they still buy us Christmas presents, even though they don't have to. So I'll give her a few ideas. She can pick 1 or 2 games out of my list, and so I'll get 1 or 2 games a year from her, and I'll play them at some point throughout the year. But otherwise, it's a pretty static collection right now.
James says, "May I recommend, Matt, lighthouses and flowers?"
Good recommendations.
Got it.
All right, Joe, I think the three of us will have just one more question before we get down to the special segment of the night.
Yep, I think so. So, all right, Matt, here's a good one for you. So, deep down in your heart of hearts, which do you prefer or are more partial to, simplicity or complexity?
Simplicity. I'm inherently efficient in the sense of how I process things. So I love a complex game, but I love more driving it down to its most basic form.
Okay. Good answer.
I love it. Yeah, I love the purity of just an idea, of a game that's just one idea. And it's just such a good idea that you just do it over and over again. I love that. I love to see those ideas because they're amazing, right? I don't mean anybody can do anything, but anybody can do anything. I don't think I could ever design, and I don't want to mess up the names, but like all those T games, Zulkin, all the games that have come off of that. I'm not sure I could ever design one of those because it's such a complex, interwoven system, right? It's all common. I'm going to mess this word up. Combinatorial mathematics. It's literally like these things do here, these things do here, and we can do a little bit of that, but the level that those folks do it at is next level. I love the idea that anybody can have some kernel of a small idea that turns into its game. Even think about, like I referenced earlier, but the crew. The crew is just trick taking, but it's trick taking done with this. You're just slightly changing the parameters each time, and then you do it over the course of 30 games, and it's brilliant and it's so fun. And just that little idea was enough to make what was a really fundamentally simple trick taker into a spiel winner and all the other things that it did. So I love that. I love those simple, brilliant ideas.
All right.
Awesome.
All right, Abby, to you, my dear.
Is there a particular time of day you feel best to get the creative juices flowing?
Tends to be at night. It tends to be after work. I that's when I first get to settle down. Like I said, I've said this a few times. My girls are older now, so I have a little more time than I used to. But when we were really designing our games, it was after bedtime, right? Back when the girls had a bedtime, and it was, so by the time you got home from work and you made dinner and whatever Colin and I would do, whatever we had to do, or you had to chauffeur kids somewhere. Finally, and especially when they were little, like 8:30 or whatever it was, you put them to bed, and then boom, now you suddenly have a few minutes where you can be like, okay, like what are we gonna do? Like what am I gonna, am I gonna work on a design? Is Ben coming over? Are we gonna, am I gonna make a prototype? And that's really when your brain can kind of turn off finally, right, from all the things that I don't want to say have to do, want to do, but all the things that you need to do throughout the course of a day to something that you don't have to do, but you're choosing to do. So when you make that switch, for me, it was always at night. So I still feel that way. Even now when I have more availability of time, I tend to be more, just kind of that, kind of fall into that pattern.
All right, and finally, a question from chat. James asked, favorite abstract game?
Great question. So I'm going to say that I'm going to try to think of a true abstract, not a like Kinesia abstract that has a theme on it technically, but really is an abstract. So I would say of true abstracts, I don't play a ton of them. It's not, I don't have, a lot of like the, I can't think of the names honestly, but there's a whole line of them. Rio Grande sells them, they're very popular. So I would say for me, it's a tough question because I just don't have very many. I played Santorini quite a bit. I really like that one. That
Okay.
one's a true abstract. So I guess I'll say that, even though I haven't played it in a bit of time, because most of the ones when I play abstract games, they tend to be, again, technically not abstracts, but really they are, and we all know it. But they're, I would say, for your classic, truly unthemed abstract game, I just don't have a ton of those in my collection.
That's fair. Totally fair. All right, and now it is that.
All right, I think I'm gonna go get our friend. I'll be back.
Get your friend going on. I will have Abby go ahead and ask another question while Joe is retrieving our friend here.
James Brazil said, "Do you prefer physical or digital prototype designs?"
Oh, physical. We basically stopped pitching games for 3 years because I was not interested in figuring out how to. I made one game on, I don't know, whatever the one on Steam is. Doesn't matter. Print whatever that digital thing was. I hated it. It felt like work. It felt like it was boring. And I played a couple games on there and really had a hard time. I'm a reader at heart. Like that's how I learn games. I read rules, but I need to see what's happening, and I'm a little bit tactical that way. And I really struggled, honestly. Not only having zero desire to, make my own protos on there, but even playing other people's protos, I struggled with on there on digital interfaces. I really, really didn't enjoy it. So that's a very, very firm answer. We did a couple because we had to. It was something that we, had signed up to do before pandemic, frankly, and wanted to try to get it out there, and it was such a chore. So we kind of basically just stopped pitching games, for a few years there, and did a little bit of email stuff, but we were kind of waiting for the whole con thing to come back so we could actually get back to kind of how I do in person things. That's just what I prefer.
All right, yeah. Daryl is in agreement with you, Matt. He says, "Preach, down with digital."
Yeah, I will not miss it, and I respect it. I like, especially pitching, and I mean this, as we've done this for a longer period of time, and we're a little bit more known. We have more interest from overseas publishers, and it's certainly a very valuable tool to get something in front of them in a way that you can do much quicker than putting a proto in a box and mailing it over the ocean. So I get that, but boy, oh boy, I just don't like doing it. So we'll see. I'm hoping to not have to do it very often, but I get it. There are going to be cases with especially with overseas publishers where we may have to, and that's okay. So
And I will say, friends, when Matt has sent out prototype designs, like the printing, I don't know what, if you do the printing yourself, Matt, or you have like an actual printing like thing, but the actual game box is so nicely printed and everything is just, it's really nicely well done for a prototype. Like when I get it in the mail, I'm like, wow, it has like the cover already like printed on the front. I don't know whether or not it's final artwork, it's TBD, right? But like every time I've gotten one from you and from Motor City Gameworks, I've just been in awe. I'm like, wow. He's not just sending me like a laminated sheet and some Ziploc bags, you know?
We felt very strongly, and it's back what I said earlier. We want to respect y'all's time, and part of that was, and I mean this. I don't want to say this in a way that's degrading anybody else. It's if some people people do the thing where they say, "Hey, play it and send it to somebody else." I get that. You have to. They're expensive to make. We're lucky because they're rolling rights. They're relatively inexpensive to produce. I do all that with companies. Like we pay for all of that. Now that was a decision that we made early on. If you look at our protos, like our personal protos, they're awful. They're like sticky notes and like scribbles and like we just like X stuff out and just like write 2 below it. We'll play that way for weeks. Especially Ben and I. Adam gets a little, he likes to make things prettier.
Yeah.
So it's always kind of funny. We kind of tease him a little bit because he'll like reprint a whole proto for like one change, or Ben and I would have just like red penned it and used it for weeks at a time. So, but for Motor City Gameworks, when we get to the point where we're sending out protos, especially to content creators, we decided early on that we wanted it to be something that they could keep if they wanted to, throw away if they didn't, give it to a friend, whatever. But we wanted it to be, something that was done, something that was self-contained, and it was, it wasn't a replica of the final, but it was something that was representative of the final product.
Yeah.
So
I really appreciated that extra effort. It was very nice to get in the mail. So
well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And with that being said, I would like to welcome our special friend to the show. Welcome in, Sir Phantom Lipton.
Good evening, Jess. Good evening, Abby. Good evening, Matt.
Good evening.
Well, we have come to the part of the show that has become a quick favorite. And Jess, just for you, I dimmed the lights this time.
Thank you, thank you.
Because I know that's one thing you're like, you should dim the lights. I'm like, this time I did. It's good if it's gonna set the mood. Why not? So there we go. All right. So as you know, we've come to the point of the show, like Bernard Pivot and James Lipton before. It's time for the Sir Phantom Lipton questionnaire. Matt, are you ready, my friend?
I am ready.
All right, here we go. What is your favorite board game?
Galaxy Trucker. Love it, love it, love it.
What is your least favorite board game?
Amazonas. And it was, I can't even remember. And there's a couple games called that, so I want to be very specific. This was, I believe, a Stefan Dora, who I love as a designer, but it was like worst Ticket to Ride. And oh, you know what? I'm gonna change my answer. It is. Nope, I'm gonna stick with Amazonas. There's 2, but I'll be nice. Amazonas, and I'm trying to remember without looking it up, but maybe I just will look it up as I stall here. And I want to make sure I don't actually misname the game and actually say a good name. But it was it is Amazonas. It was an older game, 2005, and it was indeed Stefan Dora, and it was just not a very fun game. And it was kind of Ticket to Ride-ish, rebuilding routes, and it was just, because I loved him as a designer, it was such a disappointment.
All right.
I'll stick with that.
Okay, fair enough. What board game makes you feel the most happy?
It's a good question. I'm going to say, Celestia. If you haven't played Celestia, it is such a simple, fun group push your luck. And it's the one game that I play with. Both of my daughters will play it, and my nieces and nephews will play it, and we have a riot because it's this kind of group think, push your luck thing where if everyone, you get off the ship and take points or stay on the ship longer, and it's just so much fun, and it's so simple to explain, and I love it. That's the game that makes me happy.
Have not played that one. Might have to look into it.
Yep.
All right. What board game makes you feel the most sad?
Anything with a war theme, honestly. I don't like simulating war. I don't like that theme. I played Undaunted. It was a brilliant game. Brilliant. And I struggle playing it because there's very few, war and medical are probably the two themes where I have the most trouble abstracting. I'm generally pretty good at abstracting themes, honestly. Like I see a lot of themes where, I think they're, especially in older games where, maybe folks weren't quite as cognizant as they are now of what they should be doing. But, those I can, those I can generally abstract around, but war and medical are really hard for me.
Okay. What board game components do you love?
Meeples, all meeples, anything, any awesome pieces of wood, any little custom shape you can give me. I love a good meeple, any whatever it is, animals, people, food, all of it. Love it all.
All right. What board game components do you dislike?
For the most part, well, I was going to say marbles for a second, but I actually kind of like some marble games. I would say VP counters. I can't stand VP counters. I'd rather just have a track or something else. Like the stack of like 1s and 2s and 3s and 5s. Give me a track. Give me some other way to count VP.
All right. What board game is so bad that its name should become a curse word?
Okay. Stall for me. I'm going to look this one up. It's a game that came out, and not only was the theme awful, but the game was as awful as the theme. And the cover is beautiful, but it's about it's literally a new game about raiding some country as treasure hunters. It's just terrible theme decision. And the game itself was awful. And you're rolling meeples, you're physically rolling a handful of meeples, and it wasn't fun at all. And then it was on BGA, and it wasn't fun on there either. And oh golly,
you're talking about Quetzal.
I am. That's exactly correct.
Quetzal.
Yep. What a
I played that one on BGA. It's like you're. I don't want to say you're conquistadors, but yeah, you're you're treasure hunters coming into essentially what's Mayan or Aztec, Mexico. It doesn't specifically say it is.
Yeah, but
it's there though. You know what it is. But yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and it not only again, not just the team in that case. The game itself was also bad, in my opinion. So,
all right,
word. I can't say the word as clearly as you said it. Quetzal. That's a swear word that I'm in.
All right. Actually, it's got kind of got a nice ring to it.
It does. It really does.
All right. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
So I'm an engineer because I was good at math. What I wanted to do was be a sports talk radio DJ. Even though I don't really love sports that much, I just like the idea of talking on the radio. To the point where when I was in college, I actually got a job at not the college radio station, but the actual radio station. Granted, really small community, and I was the nighttime, person sometimes, and I also got to do the halftime shows. I went to Michigan Tech, which is this little, city in the UP in Houghton, and we had Pepsi trivia, and we would literally ask a question. The prize was a 12-pack of Pepsi. People would actually come to the radio station and get their 12-pack of Pepsi. It was the worst prize of all time. I would have to yeah, no, it was this is the 90s, but it was your whole prize was a $3 pack of Pepsi. But yeah, literally so the halftime of on Sunday mornings I would go to the studio and we would run the Packers or the Lions because it was the Western UP. And whatever game we ran at halftime, I would have to do all the scores. The NFL and I would do Pepsi trivia. And then I'd have to write somebody's name on a 12-pack of Pepsi or Diet Pepsi and put it by the door so that sometime that week someone would show up and be like, I won the Pepsi. And they would take their 12-pack home. So that's what I always wanted to do. And I can distinctly remember sitting down with, a guidance counselor type person. And they said, oh, radio, huh? Do you like money? And I said, well, I do like money. Then why? You're good at math, being an engineer. I'm like, all right, fine. all my buddies were being engineers, so it was fine. But that was kind of my turning point, right? Like, I don't regret it at all. I have a wonderful life, so there's no regrets there at all. But I definitely, because even as like a seventh grader, I had this voice, so like I'd answer the phone like as like 12-year-old and be like, hello, and they'd be like, Mr. Riddle, I'm like, no, like, so I was like, I always had that kind of, the idea that, okay, I can talk a bit, let's use that. I just, beyond a couple of years at the radio station doing, we would do some, some music at night, but really it was a fully local station. Like all with the exception of they would play like one national show in the middle of the day. I can't remember which one, but otherwise it was a fully local station, and they just hired a couple of college kids every year to do, the halftime shows or the nighttime, like the way nighttime when no one was listening, kind of thing. So that was, my other career.
All right, that's a great answer. What profession would you not like to do?
Teacher. So my wife is a teacher, and it sucks. I don't think she would say that because she loves her job and she loves kids. I love kids in small groups for short periods of time. I do not love them for 7 hours a day. I think I could have been maybe a high school teacher or possibly a college professor. I could never do middle school or below. That is, it's the amount of work she does is so high. And they love her, and she loves that they love her, and she's like a celebrity. Like our little town is Oxford, and our neighboring town is Lake Orion. And if I go to Lake Orion with her, like, it's like, Mrs. Riddle, like everywhere we go, there's people like, now they're like old because she's, we've been married for 20 something years, and she's been doing it for that long, and like, so now it's like college because they'll be like, you were my kindergarten teacher, that kind of thing. But so it's kind of funny that way. But I also know from watching her, I could never do it. Like, I think I could have been a doctor, or a nurse, things like that. Like, I have none of that kind of, like, the human interaction part I'm okay with. The blood and the guts doesn't bother me at all. So I could have done that. I think I did an engineer because I was lazy. Like, engineering was easier than being a doctor at the time. But I could never, ever, ever do like elementary teaching. Not a chance in the world. So.
All right. And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I would hope that, net sum was positive. It's as simple as that. I just want to make sure that whatever impact I made or don't make, as a human being, right, was a positive one on folks. Whether it be within my own family or within friends, community, workmates, whatever it might be. Just that people go, oh yeah, that guy, yeah, I like that guy. That's all I'm asking for. I don't want to cure cancer. I just want to make sure that at the end of the day, that I left a positive impact.
All right. Well, Matt, my friend, you've made it through mostly unscathed, and that is the Sir Phantom Lipton questionnaire.
Yay.
That's great. That's a nice segment. I like that a lot.
Good. And I love Joe. I know you wanted to laugh and like a comment on some things, but you kept the straight deadpan face.
I have to keep the character. Oh my god. It says you have no idea how hard that is to do, to try and keep that persona going on. It's so ridiculous. But you know what? I think that's part of its charm. Like the fact that I just, go from me to like, okay, time to get serious. Let's go.
Yeah. And I will comment too, Matt, when you said like college radio. I also did college radio for several years, and then I went into community radio, and it was just so fun because it was just like there wasn't that like high expectation. Like people could play whatever they want. We had call-in shows. We had people getting random prizes. Come down to the station and you get a random T-shirt from this restaurant down the street.
Yep. That's a great way to put it, is community radio, because so we had college radio, which was literally like, I can remember when there was like one year where I actually worked out a lot, and like the morning show was ska, and the guy or the girl, I can't remember who it was, played ska for an hour and a half, and then the next person would play like dubstep. Like it was just like jarring. But to your point, when you got to community radio, you had a format you had to follow, and we had, we actually charted, so we had to chart. I didn't have to chart, but like, we, even though we only played music for like 5 hours, we still had to chart. And then like you said, right, it's a little different because you got to follow some more rules, but it's still pretty loose.
Yeah.
It's still like I can remember, not the Pepsi trivia was my favorite, but we did all that. Like they had a show in the middle of the day for like 2 hours, and it was just like coupons. So like you would call in, and they would just I'm not kidding. It was like Shopgo has like $2 coupons for pizza or something, and like the first 10 callers would get the coupon. Like it was wild because it was just the whole town was 5,000 people. It was this. If you, I mean, obviously folks don't know rural Michigan like I do, but the old Michigan map, which I have to flip, and then the UP is kind of up here. Well, like in the middle of nowhere is Houghton, Michigan, and that's where Michigan Tech is. And it's a great engineering school, but there's nothing else around there. Like the whole UP
Fact.
probably has 20,000 people in it, and 10,000 of them are in Marquette, and the other 10,000 are in Houghton. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but so there's
Not by much.
not by much. So the radio listening audience is probably 6,000 people. So that's who your audience was, plus 6,000 students. So community radio is a great way to put it. I loved it. I did it for about 3 years while I was in school, and we made minimum wage, and that was fine. It was a job, and
Yeah.
I really I did enjoy it a lot. It was fun.
Yeah. Very
And we would
cool.
play like local high school sports. Like we would run like the local hockey team. Like I had to come in on like Saturdays to do the just to make sure nothing fell off the air during like literally the high school hockey game would be on the radio, for the locals. It was, and then Sundays it was funny. I don't want to tell too many stories, but we had an AM station too, and the AM station would play all the church services from the previous week.
Oh,
So I had to
wow.
literally I had to run over to the AM station and change. And they were tapes, like literal cassette tapes, because they would record the services because this is it's an older community as well, a lot of shut-ins, so they would play. So like from 8 to 8:30 was the Baptist church, from 8:30 to 9:30 was the Catholic church, from 9:30 to 11 was the whatever, and I had to change tapes like I had a little schedule while I'm doing like the football pregame stuff, and like you had to run over to the studio and put the Baptists in and play it over the AM station. It was so much fun.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. Abby or Joe, do you have any other last minute questions while we're winding down the stream here?
Yeah, we do have a last minute one from James Brazil. Do you like any historical games?
I'm not against them. I'm not drawn to them either, though, only because I'm not a history person in general. I don't know a lot about history. It's just kind of one of those things where I would say like young kind of arrogant Matt thought history's a waste of time. Now I would probably tell myself there's value to it, but 17-year-old Matt didn't think so. So I didn't do a lot of history, and it's not something that I've ever really spent a lot of time studying. So the history aspect of games like that tend to be lost on me because I don't know it. I don't understand necessarily the context of what I'm experiencing. So, and also, frankly, they tend to be war games, if I'm being honest. So again, that's just not something I'm super attracted to. But I wouldn't be against it. Like I know, like somebody that a Twitter mutual, Andrew Buckholtz, is always posting about history and those games like that. So I would certainly, I'd be open to playing it. I'm open to playing anything, by the way. That's that's always the case. But it's not something that I'm drawn to either, though.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with Andrew. I played an XT and XX game or two with him. He's a cool dude.
Yep.
Awesome. Abby, you got any last questions?
Nope,
Cool.
I'm good.
Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we let you go, though, where can folks find you, and what is coming up next from Motor City Gameworks?
Yeah. So right now, I know Twitter's been having some troubles, but right now I'm still Twitter. So it's MD Riddlen, so MDRIDDLEN, or just Riddlen, RIDDLEN on BGG. I'm always available. You can DM me, ask me a question, send me a message, whatever, and I'm happy to answer anything about any of our games, life in general, whatever you want. I'm pretty easy, pretty open, pretty friendly. And then I would say, our focus right now is on getting Motor City across the ocean. So as we talked about, I think it was a little bit before the show, but we've got it on a boat finally. So it's going to be hopefully, I think it's scheduled to dock in late December, which means by the time we actually get fulfilled, it'll be January. So we're targeting a January fulfillment for Motor City, and then that'll be a probably late February retail release through 25th Century Games again. And then while we're doing that, we're focusing on getting French Quarter ready. So French Quarter will be our next project that'll come from Motor City Gameworks. It'll be, again, Loaded Roll right number 4 officially, and then that's something that we're targeting, again, like a March Kickstarter, but we'll see. Like I said, we're not going to we're not gonna put a date we might miss. We're just gonna keep working
Yeah.
till it's ready. And so probably, but same time frame as previous. Like we'll reach out to folks like y'all with our protos probably in January, hopefully, as long as we can get the cover done and get a few more sheets ready. And then at that point, we'll see how it goes. So that's our next big thing, right? Is really focusing on that. We've got a few other things in the pipeline. I referenced Durango earlier. That's going to come sometime next year, but from a European publisher. Can't say much else about that, but again, another roll and write of ours. And then we are trying to complete the Stellar Subastral TBD. Like Renegade jokingly wanted to make it like a trilogy because Stellar was in space, Subastral was Earth, and then the last one would be in the water. It would be like the oceans. So they kind of thought it'd be kind of a nice way to sort of kind of do 3 games in that series. Unfortunately, we haven't had any ideas we thought were good enough. I think again, maybe that one's just Ben and I. Adam's kind of just helping, but it's kind of one of the last things that we're designing just without Adam is involved. We probably had a few things that are worth chasing, but it's nothing that's really felt right. We want to get it right, make sure it's the best possible game. So we're working on that, but who knows? That could be years away by the time we finish it. So, but that's it, really. I mean, it's really just focusing on getting Motor City out and then getting French Quarter ready.
Yeah. Awesome. Lots of cool stuff coming down the pipeline, friends. So stay tuned to that. And yes, be sure to give Matt a follow on Twitter. Right there, his socials are there in the chat. Joe and Abby, what is coming up from you both here this week?
So tomorrow we'll be over on the Charity Board Gamers channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be playing Her Story with Danielle Reynolds, one of the designers. Looking forward to that. I know Abby has expressed her excitement about that game. And then on Thursday, again, moving our stream from Friday to Thursday because our kiddos got a wrestling meet on Friday. We're going to be playing San Francisco from the Great Dr. Knizia. That'll be at 4:30 on Thursday.
Awesome. And there you are, friends. We've got the 2 links for Joe and Abby's channels. Abby, do you have anything specific yet on your channel, or are you just going to be guesting with Joe?
Just guesting with Joe, probably throughout the month of December, because I'm just not feeling like working, and I'll let Joe do all the work, and I just tag along and do the fun stuff. So.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you have a lot of life-changing things coming up in the next couple months, so it's understandable.
That's true, and like every time I feel like I've got my life under control, then like my wisdom teeth act up or something dumb acts up, and I'm like, well, let's go back to pretending I have nothing together because it works out better that way.
Well, we love you, Abby, and I appreciate both of you being on stream with me tonight. Friends, this is going to be my last stream for the week because I am heading out to PAX U on Wednesday. So I will be traveling on Wednesday and then actually at the convention on Friday. So you all will see me probably not until the following Wednesday because I come back. I don't know. Time is weird when it comes to pandemic. So just stick around on the socials if you can, or reach out to me and send me a message in good vibes because I will need all the encouragement I can get going over and being in PAX and then getting all excited and ramped up and then like coming home and probably being totally drained. So that's per usual when it comes to going to a convention. And who knows, some of our community friends might be doing some impromptu streams live at PAX. So you might see me doing a little guesting here and there. But yeah, so I want to say thank you to all of you for hanging out with us tonight. Thanks once again to our wonderful guest, Matt, for joining us. I'm going to send everybody over on a raid train to Herb's Gambit. He is currently doing some mini painting of the Flamecraft minis.
Ooh, fun.
So he hasn't been streaming in a while, so I hope you all enjoy that. Give him some love and send all those emotes over. If you are a subscriber to the channel, you've got the cool little CCG raid emotes here in the chat. If not, just send over some love and all of that kind of thing. Old Man Coaster, yes, I hope to see you at PAX, my friend. It has been fantastic to get to meet you in person, and I can't wait to do it again. But until then, friends, stay safe, enjoy your board games, and we'll catch y'all on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.